I will give way.
I'm very grateful, and I welcome the measures she's introducing in this bill. One concern many people have in this House is that people who have already bought those properties through a discrete structure will sell those properties before the measures in this bill take effect. Would you look very carefully at the Amendment 64, which the Speaker has gratefully accepted, the manuscript amendment, which effectively prevents them doing that by her prohibition through the Land Registry.
Friend, and I'd like to thank my honourable friend actually for Amendment 64. He's been in touch with me over the weekend about this as well. He's absolutely right. We are looking at that. We are looking at the detail.
Kevin Hollinrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a real pleasure to speak after the Right Honourable Lady for barking. We work together on so much, and this legislation tonight is something we've been working on for such a long time. So, real pleasure. And I will talk about New Clause 2 when I come to my bits on whistleblowers. But really, number one thing I want to talk about is Amendment 64. I mean, I think what many people in this debate have spoken about is the danger of asset flight. And in reality, we know this is happening already. They're not going to wait for this legislation to come into effect to try and hide their money. So whether it is 18 months or 6 months or 28 days for a transition period doesn't really matter, because these kind of individuals can move this money around so quickly. So, as I say, much of this will have happened already. So I did support Amendment 16 in the name of the opposition, but I'd like to think the manuscript amendment, I'm very grateful to the Speaker and the Deputy Speakers for allowing this to be selected, for selecting this amendment, might be more effective than that. I think there are some other amendments that have been put down as well, New Clause 28 and 29, very important amendments about freezing orders. I think the difficulty with those amendments, as I said in my earlier intervention, is you can't freeze something you don't know exists. It's very difficult to do that. What you need to do is look behind the curtain, look at the who owns the assets, and that's obviously what this legislation does. It's primarily about transparency, it's being able to see who owns what. And I'm very grateful to the support of many people on this manuscript amendment 64, including my honourable friend, I think he's honourable, should be right honourable, but the member for Weston-super-Mare, the government's anti-corruption champion. We worked very closely on this, and straight away when we looked at this legislation, we thought there is something missing here. Clearly, these people are going to move this money around very quickly to make sure it's not touched. I think this probably does something. I'm not a lawyer. I looked at this over the weekend and I didn't have any legal input, so I can't say it's totally fit for purpose. So I'm really interested in what the Minister has to say about it. And he's been engaged in this all the way through, and we're willing to discuss with me, as we did yesterday, talking about this, what we do to close this potential loophole. I think it simply does. It requires the beneficial ownership to be registered with Companies House, and that links into the Land Registry's requirement to make sure something is properly registered with Companies House before it allows a transfer or a sale to happen. So really, and without Land Registry doing that, of course, you can't sell or transfer a piece of land or property. So I think very happy to do that. Yeah.
He's making a very good speech about the importance of that relation with Land Registry and Companies House. Would he agree with me that, to the government particularly, a point, that the requirement still to pay to access the Land Registry dims that light when it is shone rather than enhances it, and actually making it an open registry with Companies House as an open registry would actually aid this process of light shining as well?
What it will do, this is a public register, of course. The beneficial owner will be revealed, and that person then can be, if that person's on the sanctioned list, for example, that asset can be frozen. That's the way this will actually work. And if you're in the legislation, I think page 49, Schedule 3, clauses 2 and 3, 1, 2 and 3 require the Land Registry to do that, and it can prohibit or restrict a transfer or a sale. That's the key to this. So the only where it's not currently fit for purpose, in my view, this doesn't take effect for 18 months. If you took those clauses out or changed the timescales, made it immediate this comes into immediate effect upon the commencement date of the legislation. It means from day one, I think, potentially it would prevent that sale or transfer of assets from one person to another or one entity to another, and then therefore move those assets around to prevent what we're all concerned about, which is asset flows. There is pointless having lots of law enforcement people charging around not knowing where to look. Whistleblowers tell you where to look. 43% of all financial crimes are identified through whistleblowers. Yet it's something we don't talk about. It's not just more regulators we need. We need somebody who's going to point us in the right direction. Regulators will always be watchdogs, never bloodhounds. You need the bloodhounds in the organisations willing to speak up if things are going wrong. Every single economic crime I've dealt with in the work on the banking side of things and in stuff like the Economic Crime Bill has come as a result of information provided by whistleblowers. GPT Special Projects, my own constituent Ian Foxley, for example, Airbus, $3 billion in fines internationally, £900 million into UK Treasury. All that money came as a result of a disclosure from whistleblowers. Every single case you want to think about, HBOS, PPI scandal, all this, whistleblowers. Yet the protections and compensation we offer whistleblowers in the UK is pretty much non-existent. I mean, in the case of Lloyd's HBOS, the FCA themselves were guilty of not protecting the whistleblower. Barclays tried to identify the whistleblower in a case within Barclays, yet very little or nothing is done. So you've got to think, as a whistleblower, I'm thinking of blowing the whistle. Ian Foxley, my constituent, GPT Special Projects, which resulted in £28 million of financial sanctions in Southwark Court last year. He has been 11 years without a single penny. That man was earning £200,000 a year. 11 years without a single penny. Do you think he would step forward next time, or somebody else would do the same? We've got to make sure we protect whistleblowers. Happy to give.
Thank you. Minister Paul Scully.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank all honourable members who have spoken in this important debate for their constructive approach to the important bit of legislation and indeed an engagement prior to this day as well. Let me just quickly whip through as many points and amendments that have been made as possible. Firstly, to the member for Birmingham Hodge Hill was talking about slaps. The Deputy Prime Minister made a call for evidence on Friday, but that's definitely not just a listening exercise. It's important that when we need to act, we will act. Someone raised a point about nominees, both in the second reading speech and in the committee stage. And if nominees are being directed by someone else, say the beneficial owner, then the person doing the directing is caught by Schedule 2, Part 2, Paragraph 6, Condition 4, and is therefore a registrable beneficial owner. Now, but I will say that my right honourable member, the member for Bromley, came up with a really important point, and is similar as right honourable lady member for Barking as well. I'm really keen to work with them in the coming days to make sure that we do not leave any gaps within this. Actually, we have a very common interest in doing so. First of all, as I say, the government have moved the amendment to reduce the transition time from 18 months to 6 months. But as I said when closing second reading, I can absolutely see merit in requiring all of those selling property to submit a declaration of their details at point of transfer of land title during the transition period. And that will mean, in effect, for anyone selling, we'd be giving them a 0-day transition period. They would have to register ownership if selling, and that way we either get their ownership details or they don't sell. We get it at the end of the transition period. If they don't sell, we get it at the end of the transition period. We'll get their details. Now, I'm really keen to work with my honourable friend, the member for Thirsk and Moulton, to see how far we can go, how we can get this worded, because it is a difficult thing to draft in the other house, but I'm really keen that make sure that in the coming days I hope you're satisfied to sit down with me and work on that, and so we can give further consideration ahead of finalising the bill in the Lords. So I therefore ask that these other amendments in this area be withdrawn. Turning to Amendment 7, new clause 7.